All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this very special, very last minute Fallout the Role Playing Game Winter of Adam chat with some of the creatives behind the amazing project Winter of Adam. Thank you so much, everybody that was able to join us for this. I know that this would be episode 2 of our Fallout the Role Playing Game Winter of Adam actual play that we are doing, but we did have a little bit of an emergency for some of our players, so we threw this together because we were going to do this at some point anyway, so why not now? I just want to go around and we'll introduce everybody, starting with, I guess everybody kind of knows me, but hi, my name is April Hill. I am the community manager for Modifius Entertainment, yeah, that's me. That's what I do here. I set things like this up and talk to all the fun people, so I love doing it. We will go to the person next on, just right next to me, Dot. If you
Oh,
want.
hi. Oh, I'm first. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Dot. You may know me online as Little Red Dot. I'm the marketing director for Cobalt Press by day, and by night, I like to do things like this, freelance and write really cool tabletop projects. So, yeah, I was a writer for this project.
Awesome. Okay, and Dawn, we'll go over to you.
Hi, I'm Don, and I'm a tabletop role-playing game writer designer. I was the lead designer on this game and consider myself very lucky to have gotten to work with all of these people.
Yes. All right. Yeah, and Jackie.
Hi everybody, I'm Jackie. You know me on the internet as Death by Mage. I'm a TTRPG writer and editor. I worked on game design for Winter of Adam, and I currently am now the main editor for Fallout the tabletop game on the Modifius.
That's awesome. Yay. And Virginia.
Hi, I'm Virginia. On Twitter, I go by Tabletop Horde. I was a writer on this project.
Okay, and Jesse.
I'm Jesse. By day, I work on Star Trek Online as a senior game designer for Cryptic Studios, and I was also a writer for this project.
That's so cool. And we're doing a special thing right now with, I should put that in. I'm going to plug that right now.
Oh, the live stream that's also running?
Yeah, we've got the giveaway for we've got a Star Trek Online giveaway that we're doing, like in conjunction with like stuff. It's got the link. Click the link. You learn about it. Star Trek Online. Um, okay, thank you. That's awesome. Gabe.
Hi, I'm Gabe Hicks, Gabe James Games across the internet. I am game designer and storyteller and lead at Mythic Grove, and I was a writer on this project.
And Matt.
Hi, Matt, Killer GM online. I do run games for people, sometimes do a stream once in a while, and I was doing game design on this one.
Very cool. So we have a little bit of everything here. We don't have any of our artists here, but we do have a little bit of everything. I think a pretty good mix. So, yay, lower decks, lower decks. Yeah, really super excited about that one coming out soon. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining me here for this little roundtable chat. If anybody ever has any questions that if you're watching and you have any questions, just drop them into chat and we'll try to get to them at some point during the stream. Pulling it up over here because it's way easier than just doing it like this. I've got like 3 monitors and this one's kind of like wonky over here. It's way over here, and so when I'm looking at it, it's like meh. All right. Well, thank you all again for joining me. So about the book, this one has been in the works for a minute. A few of us, while everyone was joining, you were saying we haven't talked about this book. Like, we haven't got to talk and like really chat about this book in like a year. You were saying because this one's been in development for a while, right? So how long ago did this project start? Does anybody?
I'm looking at Dawn for that.
Yeah, no, it would have started.
Like
This would have
round
started just over 2 years ago was when we first had meetings, and it was James and Samantha and I talking about different ideas for the book, and I put together a pitch packet, and they approved it, and then Bethesda approved it, and then I got to go out and find awesome people to work with. And so that process started, about 2 years ago. But I think probably folks who are watching this know that there's an approval process with Bethesda because it's Fallout. It takes some time. So we had a long hiatus once we kind of got the team together and the ideas together before we actually got a chance to start writing. I would say that was more like January of last year.
Wow. Yeah, so when people ask all the time, because we get questions all the time, like, when's the next thing? When's the next thing? When are we getting the GM screen? It takes time, approvals. Just look at this book.
Yeah.
It takes time, so be patient. They love it, and they're wanting to see it as much as you are, because they put their blood, sweat, and tears into this, and they're all their talent. So. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. We've got like I said, if you have any questions in the chat, or if you have any questions, pop them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. Oh my gosh, need to do like mouth exercises before I do these. What are some? So what exactly? I know a few of you said you're in game designers and some of the writers. So what are some of the pieces, the specific pieces that each of you had hands on? So Dot, what is something that you specifically worked on in the book?
Yeah. So I developed the new settlements. I wrote the new ones. Not I did have my hands on Good Neighbor as well, but I can't claim Good Neighbor. We all know that. So yeah, I did throw some cheeky bits into Good Neighbor, but the other settlements I designed, and we might be able to talk about this, but technically one of the adventure locations started as a settlement and then evolved into this horrific first adventure for this book. So that was in my hands, and then I got lucky actually near the end of development to get to write some of the cool sidebars. So some of the I don't want to spoil anything. Some of the really cool stuff in sidebars, special extra bits. I was given some space to add to those.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, Jackie, what about you?
I worked on. I did the environmental hazards, and I also streamlined basically how to design combat encounters and how to streamline basically creating NPCs or increasing their levels or changing them. So basically, I took like the big chunks of like the core rulebook where the NPC section was, and I consolidated to about probably 10 pages or less. I think it was less in the end, like on layout, but on paper it was much less on Word doc. But I managed to consolidate it, and that was the important thing. That was our goal. We wanted to consolidate it, and then the other big thing was we introduced a scaling method, so it would be for quick on-the-fly scaling. So if you wanted to put an NPC in a combat, you could, and then you can say, all right, cool, then we'll do that. And yeah, I see the comment in chat. Yeah, the Razard is mine. The radioactive blizzard. Who doesn't love the terrifying notion of that? You're welcome. That was definitely my favorite contribution. And I wrote a lot of the stat blocks for Winter of Adam. I didn't do all of them. I did a good chunk of. I did some about half, but I did contribute to the boss that's featured on the cover. So that's definitely something I treasured very heavily.
That's so cool, and much appreciation for the consolidation of the NPCs, because much appreciation for that. Everybody knows why. Like, thank you for that. Really. Okay, Jesse, what about you?
So I wrote about a war section that erupts in the middle of the adventure, and the not so secret part that made this really easy is that all I actually had to do was take all of Dot's amazing settlements and characters and go, okay, GM, all those cool people and fantastic places that all your PCs met in Act 1, threaten them.
Gasoline, matches, you know the rest.
It's like you got to be the behind it. It's like you got to be the GM behind the GM, and you got to and Dot got to make all of the character backstories, and then you were like Thanks for making these character backstories. They're mine
now
now.
I'm going to ruin their lives. Yeah.
It'd be
Didn't
absolutely
seem
unfortunate if
like
something
really
happened
nice
to them.
people.
They seem like really nice people.
Yeah, that's really it. It's like you've got these characters who have their own stories and lives that are in motion out there in the snowy waste, thanks to the work from Dot and the rest of the team. And then the Church of Adam decides to go on a war footing, and it puts all of this stuff at risk. And the advice to the GM is this is a Fallout game, so you give the players opportunities to make choices that make them feel meaningful and to use their skills in interesting ways. So focus on the places that the players enjoyed and connected with, and the characters that they thought were cool at your table, and that's where the war goes. And you're going to follow, just like an embedded reporter, you're going to follow the war with your camera as your players are getting invested in these things, and then it takes them to the places that they are invested in, and then they make choices about how to use their abilities to confront those challenges.
I love it. It's so awesome. I'm so excited for this book. That's awesome. Okay, Matt, what about you?
I guess I can jump the line. Hi, yeah, I did, a lot of my work was mostly on the items, so any of those new items that you got, also the starting packages for your character origins, what you get when you pick things up. I know we've seen some of those new origins showing up here on the Winter of Adam playthrough, and I'm eager to see how those play out for folks. As well as, I also worked on the minion rules, which is, the you don't need a full-blown NPC for this. You just need to throw some raiders or what have you at them. Just throw some minions in there. It'll be fine. It won't overwhelm anybody, I promise. And, a couple of the unique items, of course. Much to do about my baby, the Magnanomicon. So, we'll see how it comes up there.
That's so awesome. Yeah, all of the items, like give us all the things, like anything that was in any of the games that we don't have yet in the core book. It's like give us all the things. We want all the things.
Yeah. There's a lot of things to work up, so it was fun coming up with some of those stats and modifications. Everybody loves new Ripley's, right?
Yes, exactly. All right, Gabe, what about you?
I got to be kind of all over the place, which was a lot of fun. I worked on new PC Origins, like finally getting to be a child of Adam, which is like something that's so out there for the Fallout universe that like you see them all the time, but now you get to be a child of Adam, and you don't have to go through the rigorous process of giving yourself radiation poisoning, which
Very
is
nice.
horrifying. Getting to work on like the campsite building stuff was really fun, and even the settlement downtime, which it felt like getting to work on the stuff that I loved from the video games and finding a way that like you could still enjoy them in the tabletop experience and also do it in a way that is kind of automated on itself. So even with the GM still helping to tell the story, it can still feel like the game where it's like, oh, as the GM, I'm just facilitating now, like which is like what's gonna happen, how it's gonna work out. We all know the rules. I'm just helping make sure that the rules work, and I love that stuff. I love base building.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so excited about that. Like, that was one of the things in the actual play series that we're doing now is something new that I hadn't touched on or anything or done yet, and so it was exciting introducing these new rules, the campsites and the settlements. And oh, guess what? You have a settlement rank of 2, reputation rank of 2, going into going into this automatically. And they're like, what is this? It was new and exciting for my players who've played before but haven't had these yet. So it made it fresh and exciting for them again.
That's what you want when you're giving someone a new book.
Yeah, it was so cool because they're like, what is this? What are we doing? Oh, love it.
Awesome.
Yes. Virginia.
I definitely didn't nearly just knock my coffee over then. I worked on a couple of bits. I think the first big chunk that I did was actually a lot of like weird foundational stuff that is things like I wrote Diamond City, which was kind of the template for a lot of the settlements that came afterwards. So Dot, I'm so sorry. And a lot of style guide based stuff, because some folks in chat might know, and I think most folks here know, but I used to work for Modifius, and I was actually the project manager for Fallout way back in the day. So I've seen all the style guides and things that do and don't slip through Bethesda approvals or not. So Don had me put all of that together, and then from that I wrote Diamond City, and that has a really fun, kind of complicated, almost political drama-y thing going on without spoiling much. And I also wrote bits for the Crater of Atom later on, including this heart-wrenching little side quest that I won't spoil. But I'm sorry if anyone plays through it, because it everyone here knows what I'm talking about. It just it
Don't
twists.
apologize for causing the pain. That's what
Yeah.
it's there for.
We're here for pain and tragedy.
I'm sorry, not sorry, but I will shift some of the blame onto Don because it came out of a couple of characters that he had initially detailed and kind of a side quest that was kind of in the bones that got passed on to me to flesh out. So, but those are really, really fun to write. Like, I'm a huge Fallout fan, and I have been since I was a teenager. And when I first started playing RPGs, I was like, I would love for a Fallout RPG, and now one exists. So, like, playing Fallout 4, I loved being around Diamond City because it feels so alive. And getting to, like, go in and play with the guts of it in this time before we see it in the game was really, really cool.
That's and something special I thought was, or something that I thought was really cool. I when I was reading through it and I was getting ready to run it on stream, I was like, oh, okay, it starts. I mean, if you've seen episode 1 or session 0, you know where it starts, near Diamond City. So hopefully there's no spoilers for anybody here yet. But yeah, that's where we kind of start off with. But so I was like, okay, so, oh, cool, this is perfect because the box, the starter set that we have also, spoiler, has some Diamond City stuff in there. And I was like, oh, cool, well, I can take some bits from that. And then I'm reading through the Winter of Adam book, and I'm like, oh, it's already here. And it goes into more detail than what the starter set did. So I was like, yes, this is perfect. So I was really excited about that it was expanding on past stuff that we've seen, in the starter set or the core book or some of these other adventures that we have. So I was really excited about that.
I think what's cool as well is that we're seeing all of these locations, whether they're new or ones that we know from the games, in this new winter setting. So like Diamond City, if folks haven't read it yet and you go to read it or you play through it, Diamond City in winter is not the same as Diamond City as you approach it in like Fallout 4. The conditions are completely changed, but it kind of weirdly feels like a new place, alongside all those other really fantastic places that Dot wrote, which I loved reading through all of them.
Thanks.
Yes. And Dawn, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on a lot of different things. I spent a lot of time working with people, and we didn't all write all at once. There's a process that we kind of worked through. So that once we were all together, we could actually start writing. Virginia worked on the kind of foundational stuff, and then Dot worked on the settlements and world building, which helped inform Gabe and Jackie and Matt on some of the mechanics to start designing. And then Chris and Jesse, and then myself too, working on the actual narrative chapters of the book. And so everything kind of came together one step at a time, and I got the opportunity to work with people as they were working on their sections to make sure that we were all kind of telling the same story, and we had a really communicative process overall. We had our own little Discord server that we worked in, and people were bouncing ideas at each other and
posting
really
playlists.
cool.
The amount of playlists that were posts for people to write with, it's outrageous.
Yeah. It was a really fun process, and I got to write portions too. So I wrote the introduction chapter, which doesn't sound like a super cool chapter, but I kind of think it's pretty cool. In this book, there's a lot of guidance and suggestions on how you can take this book and move it anywhere, set it anywhere. It doesn't have to be the Commonwealth, because I know a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people who play Fallout. They play in their home city or a place that they're just really compelled by. And I wanted to make sure that everything we did, whether you ran this full campaign as it's written or you kind of broke it down into its little pieces, would be modular. People could use it in as many different ways as possible, because I know people were hungry for another Fallout book, and everyone is really on board with that. And so that's kind of what we work towards. And narratively, I got to write the final chapter, The Day of Division, which is horrific. And I am a big horror fan, so I was very excited to kind of go down that rabbit hole. I won't say anything about it, but it's a truly harrowing series of events.
I love that. And yeah, there's plenty of people. I was one of I did a setting in Texas, and I've seen somebody was asking today on Facebook, Cincinnati, I think. Somebody was wanting to do something in New York, so I love that you've kind of given that that guidance of, hey, you can play in the world, that as you know it right now, but if you want to make something all your own, go for it. And here's kind of like how you can do it, and here's a little like if you're bowling, here's the bumpers to help you along the way if you want to use them. And I love that you said you can use this or throw it out. I think that was like a specific quote in the book, like use it or throw it, but it was a more clever quote than that. What was it? Do you remember
I think it's a sidebar called the Golden Rule somewhere in there that talks about, like use the rules that work for you and your group at your table. The game's not going to break apart if you don't personally enjoy keeping track of your food. Your group doesn't want to do that. You don't have to necessarily. Jesse mentioned this earlier when he was talking about choice and consequence and how important that is to Fallout. And everybody really embraced that idea from beginning to end. It's something that I think is really special about this book, and it's something that I love. I've now gotten a chance to see it in its finished form, which is beautiful. I love how just how much every single group that plays this will have a completely different experience, and hopefully that experience will be driven first and foremost by the choices the players make, their successes and their failures, because I think that failure, at least in my experience of playing Fallout, I fail all the time. The amount of time I spend running away from things is like a third of the game. So.
All those failed charisma checks every time.
There's definitely stuff to run away from in Winter of Adam.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I did have a player, charisma. I had a player in my long campaign who maxed out their luck and their charisma. Game breaking.
Yeah,
Do not do this to your overseer. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun to do, but they were able to say, I would like to use luck for that. And I would be like, I don't,
It's basically Jar Jar the entire way through.
It was great. It was great. So, and speaking of also being able to play, so have all of you been able to play this game? Not the video game, but have all of you gotten to play the TTRPG?
Not yet. I have my date marked though. So
okay, good. I asked this to one of the other groups, like, hey, have you? I know you get to write. I think it was the Star Trek group. I was like, hey, I know that you get to write and do all these fun things, but how often do you actually get to play? Even our project manager was like, oh, not as much as I would like, but well, if anybody ever wants to come on the stream, like anyone guest on for this book. I know that you know all the spoilers for it, but if anybody ever wants to, you're more than welcome to come and guest on it and get to play a little bit. So,
I mean, I wouldn't say no, but I have a Deadlands group that would be very sad if it.
Yes, we love the tears. We love the tears. It's so good.
Tell them that they're going to be playing Deadlands Hell on Earth, but then.
But extra, it's okay.
Yeah, what was it? I have a group I'm playing with regularly. They were saying, so they saw my announcement. They said, so does that mean we're going to be playing Winter of Adam next? And I'm like, you could. It's not. I'm not suggesting anything. But if you want me to run it, I totally can. It's not like I haven't read this book inside and out for a while.
The funny thing is, despite all of the years that I have done work on Fallout, from like the core book and the start set and this and other little bits in between, I have only ever actually gotten to play during like playtest sessions for testing things. which aren't like full sessions. Like anyone who thinks that like play testing a game while it's being made is like super glamorous, it's usually just like testing little short scenarios with really specific things. And that is the most I've ever had a chance, just for time wise, to actually play or run anything. But now this is out, I have an excuse because it's less prep to do because it's already written and I've already read it because I wrote some of it. So maybe in the next year I'll get around to actually running a game.
Yeah, or y'all can, I mean, now that you're all here, at one point, if you ever want to set up a one shot where all of you get to play, or one of you run it, or whatever. I mean, if y'all want to talk about it, I will help. I'll run tech for it, and then you can all play and have fun because you deserve it. Because you did such an amazing job on this book, and you deserve to
thanks.
enjoy what you have created for all of us. So,
Well, for
just
those
throwing
of
it
us
out.
sub, though, there is the joy of just, seeing the players react to these things. There is
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
certain delight in, having the players uncover what you've set up. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
had
I
a lot of
love-
I wrote all those environmental conditions for the sheer fact I knew someone's gonna just yell out there across their table, going, "That's a thing," and I'm like, "That's all I want to see here."
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
I want to hear.
I want to hear in the Discord the first time a player gets the heebie-jeebies. There were actually moments when I was designing stuff, I'd messaged on and I was like, okay, how far can I push the envelope? Like, am I gonna is this too far for Fallout? And he was like, nah, well, don't bring us back if it is. Just give it to me. So there was like some weird things and something specific that comes into the USS Germination adventure.
yeah, oh god, the germination.
yeah.
There's
That
so
Germination
ought
was
to
so
make
good.
you, yeah,
So
it ought to
good.
make
yeah.
give somebody nightmares. It deserves it. So
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the other. It was a mechanics contribution, but my big lore contribution there is the fruits and their
Yep.
lovely fun.
yeah, that was
Mhm.
that was the moment that I messaged on. I was like, is it gonna be weird if I do this cough cough spoilery cough cough thing? And Don was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I was like, somebody's gonna reel me back in, right? Because if not, I'm gonna just
a
keep
bad
going.
person for that. Yeah,
Don
there's
let's
some-
go a little bit more.
Yeah, the flesh fruit was definitely a strange thing. So
Yeah, when you're looking at body horror and Fallout, you're kind of like, okay, here's the master and his centaurs. What else can we do?
right, well, and it really came down to what we're talking about so much that makes this book great is the fact that, well, it's nuclear winter, right? Like the scarcity problems, all of the stakes are really, really high in a time where nothing is available. And I was like, what if I created something that everybody needs but nobody wants to eat?
Yep.
That was basically it's like let's give everybody what they need. They need food, but what if it was this kind of food?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
There's a lot of like very vivid things. There's dark moments, and not just with the war section, but the war section's a great example where there could be significant loss. Like there's some serious stuff mixed in with all of the wacky ideas in this book. That we did add in, throughout the book, the sidebars that give not just sort of content warnings about what you might expect, but as much as we could, very, very simple recommendations for things you could change that wouldn't change the overall arc of the story. It wouldn't be hard at all, just to provide people other options in case they didn't want to engage with flesh fruit and various other things. But I think people will. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and that is something that is important, and I love that was covered in the core book, and I think it was touched on. No, it was also in Winter of Adam, lines and veils, and there were actual quotes. It was the pause button. I loved that. I was like, oh, video game TTRPG pushing pause.
Yeah, just hit the pause.
Yes, I love that. I was like, that's good terminology to use. Like, do we need to push pause? Do we need to go back to a previous save? Like, I loved that. I was like, yes, thank you. So that was very cool. So making sure that those were in there were because I think that some people forget to put that in their books. And with a book like Fallout, I mean, that's known to have these types of imagery and scenarios and stuff, I think it was extra important to make sure that was in there. So very, very well done putting that in there. Let's see. I think we have a few questions. Let me look up where we were at here. There was one about the synth origin mentioned something about cybernetic implants being easier to install or not complications. Is that a hint at some future content? If it would, I'm pretty sure we couldn't talk about it anyway.
We probably couldn't talk about it.
None of us are getting in trouble tonight, y'all.
Nice
Yep,
try.
yep,
No,
I want to get invited back. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
me too.
I like to keep my job, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, these are Gen 3 synths. Gen 3.
Yep.
There could be other.
Who
you
worked
know,
on the synth?
There's like, yeah. Was anybody here?
the
Was
for
that
synth,
me?
synth
the actual
origin?
origin, that was you,
It
yeah.
was you, Gabe.
Yeah,
That was a
that
long
was
time ago, I know.
It was a bit back. I just threw the items at your guys. And
Well,
like,
then, to answer your question, even I don't know.
Gabe, I just need you to know that you've made me feel validated in this moment, because I did actually have to message Don at one point and be like, have you got the list of all the bits that I wrote? Because I've forgotten which bits I've written in this.
I was like, hey, me too,
Yeah.
don't worry about it.
Because I was
Yeah.
like, wait, that's not, huh?
So you have to realize, like,
Yeah,
in the
'cause-
process, Virginia and I wrote early. Like, we wrote, like, right? Our stuff was due at the very, very beginning, the settlement. So, like, we didn't know what everybody was going to do with what we wrote. We kind of, like, wrote together and then, like, handed it over to Dawn, and then Dawn passed it off to the rest of this incredible team. But, like, we submitted at the beginning. So it's been a very long time, like, a long time coming to get to see how everybody kind of culminated and built off of each other's pieces and parts. So
I think the only bit that I did that was towards the end was doing Crater of Atom, because I was doing that alongside Don doing some of the quests that surround that, and I then got like the bulk of about the settlement and NPCs to flesh that out. So like, it's really weird when you write, especially because I think I was like one of the first to start writing as well, because Diamond City then the template.
yeah, I used your template to write the
how everything got
rest of the
presented.
settlements. Yeah.
So I was like, no pressure. I only have to hand this off to somebody else who then has to use it, not just to write about, you know, like something that already exists, but brand new stuff, and trying to take that into account. And I think I've described like the writing of the Diamond City stuff and all of the weird interweaving webs in there as like being a fever dream to me now. Because I go back and read it and I'm like, I'm not sure where any of that came from. But it apparently exists. I apparently wrote this, but it's been so long now that like it's like you could hand it to me and I'd be like, oh, this is nice. Who wrote this? Probably
like, oh
genuinely forget it
wait,
was
yeah.
yeah.
So
Same
this
phenomenon working on Star Trek Online, but with bugs.
Yeah.
So this question kind of goes along with some of that. So since you all work with pre-existing content, like Diamond City and Good Neighbor and stuff like that, and their characters, so are you given materials and information and background information and design docs from Bethesda, or do you have to like go on? I think I saw somebody earlier, or y'all were talking about it in chat, like going on the public wiki and doing stuff like that. So where do you get your information from to write for?
You mean
these
other
things?
than the hundreds and hundreds of documented hours in video gameplay?
And that too.
Yeah. No, we were given certain design things, right? Obviously Bethesda, it's their IP, so we have to follow their rules. So they did give us some stuff, but I remember telling Dawn, we knew we were going to put Diamond City, and we wanted, I was like, can we have like maybe another official location? And I really wanted to be Good Neighbor because I've never played without romancing Hancock. So I know the most Diamond City, like the most lore I know from Fallout, it revolves around Hancock's story because I've played through it every single time I've played. And so I knew I wanted to have this kind of ridiculous thing that had to do with Hancock prior to when you meet him in the video game. So I was like, I don't care about anything else in Good Neighbor. I just want to write this little tiny ridiculous thing about Hancock in this moment of like, you know, where he's at in his life before you come around and can take him in as a companion. And so anyways, that's how Good Neighbor came about. So, you know, Good Neighbor is Good Neighbor. I put some things and they came back and said, ooh, let's add this, or we need to hit the core locations and stuff like that. But really, the reason Good Neighbor made it is because I begged, because I wanted to write a Hancock story. That's actually the truth.
That's how I would be for Mass Effect and Garrus. Like I will romance all the other NPCs for Mass Effect, but it's like I have to every time, and I've played through it like 4 times, like all of the games 4 times for Mass Effect, and it's like I always have to
Yep.
go. Garrus is like the first
Yeah,
one.
it never fails every time I play it. It's Hancock, y'all. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love this idea that so much of his identity is tied to his outfit, that there's this like comfort he finds in the identity of something that makes him feel great about himself. And what happens when you just take a piece of that and it's gone, and like you watch this grown man have a kind of a depressive breakdown in the middle of atomic winter over, you know, a lost piece of clothing. So there was something humorous in that you know, I thought was kind of hilarious. So anyways,
Solidarity.
That's the whole thing together, though. You don't understand.
I know. So anyways, I just thought it was so funny. Like, he's just so tied to his outfit. Like, what happens? What happens if before we come around in the, you know, Fallout 4, he didn't have his whole whatever? Like, is he even half the man he's supposed to be? Who knows? So yeah, that's kind of how that comes. But they gave us other stuff. I'm sure they Virginia, they gave you a whole bunch of stuff on Diamond City.
Well, it's a really funny thing, and I feel like I can say this, and maybe I'll get in trouble, but probably not. Is that, like, I think when people ask, like, oh, what do you get from, like, IP holders like Bethesda when you work on this stuff? And the answer is none of the things that you'd quite expect
Right, yeah.
the way you'd expect it, because, like, Fallout's lore is huge, and like it's not like they have like 20 people in the room who like guard the tome of all the history. So a lot of the time, like fan resources like the Fallout Wiki, which is amazing, are actually better at cataloging lore than any company has the actual time or resources to do. So a lot of the time, they would send us and go like, the wiki is the best resource. It's the most documented. It's accurate. Go on there. And obviously, if they spot anything when they read through it that really doesn't feel right, they're going to flag it up. So it's not like they give us like tons and tons of like insider documents about settings. It's so established in not just the wiki, but in like books they've already put out about the game, like the game guides that you get for playing, you know, through Fallout 4, so you can see all the monster stats at various levels and which certain ones are where. Like, we had a copy of that in the Modifius office when we were first building the role-playing game, and that's got loads of bits of information. And like, I've got a history of Fallout book that they produced for like merch at a convention, which has loads of locations detailed out. So it's less of like cool secret inside documents and more just them pointing us to the resources that they know and trust, that they're comfortable have cataloged all of this stuff correctly, or stuff they've already printed and published. And then you kind of just have to base it off of like, what have they already done in terms of theme and tone and scope that we can then kind of go, okay, this matches up and that works fine. Because it like, it is a lot of words we send to them. Like, there's a lot of words in that book. That like no single individual in an approvals department somewhere could like read it through and be like, yes, this is all, you know,
perfect.
Checking it against a document. It just, I would feel bad for that person if that was a thing. But like artwork wise, they were always really good at showing us like artwork of stuff. And if we wanted to see like, what does this thing actually look like in the game files if it's not like this big on the screen in the background, we had access to all of that stuff, which made it really easy to look up. If you want to look up like details of Diamond City without all the NPCs in, those images kind of exist in the game files that they can send us. So they give you a lot, but like none of it's like super secret insider stuff.
No. And there was a lot of like,
resources.
you know, throwing the spaghetti at the wall. Like, you'd be like, ooh, I really want to do a X, and then we'd go back but that's be like, you can't do X, but you can do Y. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna work the thing in, you know. So like, we did get some like, we can't use this. You know, I really wanted to write a vault, and they were like, no vaults for this. And I was like, cool. What if I just pull them out of the vault? Can we do that? Can they be vault? Well, I'm just gonna pull them out. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. So I did a lot of like skirting the rules in certain places to like get what I wanted. And some of that has to do just with timeline, right? For example, no Brotherhood. Why? Well, guess what? They're not in the Commonwealth yet, everybody. Like, they're not there yet. So that was like a whole thing, is like, how do we write without this really important faction here? And, you know, a few other things. So, but honestly, Bethesda was really good to us. Like in terms of what came back that was like, a couple like, no, we can't, or can we alter this, was actually relatively small, at least on my end, which really surprised me because I really thought they were going to be like, get rid of it. So
there's a lot of like, how do we get these things to interact with canon events without actually disrupting the canon events, or like implying something that would be there that otherwise wouldn't be, but still have it feel like this new stuff that we've created meshes with the old.
Yep.
And I mean, like, a lot of that is like Don as well going in and editing stuff to make sure that it fits and that everything fits, because it's less about like one thing on its own and more about everything when it's put together. Like, does it feel right?
Yep.
There's always going to be a little bit of separation in terms of believability, no matter what. But as long as nothing directly contradicts or assumes, and that's one of the tricky things, it's one of the reasons why we wrote something that happens before Fallout 4, is you don't want to assume that anything that could have happened in Fallout 4 did happen. The players could have made any choice in that game, and so we don't want to contradict that. But you do have to, like, if you read Winter of Adam, and at the end of it, the question that would come to my mind immediately is, that's kind of weird that Hancock and the mayor, none of these people talk about the gigapede that happened last year. That seemed like it was a big deal. So, there's always a little bit of like stretching your imagination that way. But we were able to tell a really original story that was parallel with world that already existed and added to it in new ways. It was really fun.
To some degree, it's the Fallout universe. Oh yeah, we spent all winter fighting monsters and cultists. I mean, just like the last 10 years.
Right.
just another
That's
Friday.
cold, yeah.
Anybody who's ever played the Quiet Year knows that's how it works.
Yeah, during my mini series of playing the starter set, Once Upon a Time in the Wasteland, Diamond City doesn't exist anymore. The Gek was used.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another example of something
Yeah.
that could. Yeah, it was a fun. Tears. One of my players was playing chicken with me on stream, and I was like,
Oh.
okay, I was like, this is gonna happen. It was great. Whew. So, yeah, you can alter the world at home. Yeah, just you can't do it in the book. Obviously.
Yeah, we can't design for alteration.
Like any good cookbook, you can modify and suit to your taste, and that's okay. Just don't expect everybody else to, take that to the Michelin restaurant.
Exactly. Jonathan, we've got a question specifically for you. They say you mentioned in the Polygon article last month that you chose the Children of Adam as an antagonist quickly, and how you wanted to draw parallels between real-world religious history. That's kind of cool. Which one of my players is doing, and it's freaking awesome. She's like, "Oh, it's an angel of the Atom," because we have a Protectron who I love in the book. It's like, oh, Protectrons are seen as angels for the Children of Adam, and we have a Protectron and we have a Child of Adam, and she met the Protectron. She's like, oh, let me bask in your glow. It was great. Sorry, that was a tangent. So, parallels between real world religious history. Were there any particular religions or events you used to draw those parallels, do you feel like?
Yeah.
Without
yeah,
being,
I don't think you have to look too hard to see some parallels, and not just with what we did, but in the Church of the Children of Adam in general, with monotheistic religions like Christianity, the name Adam, and there's references to Eve, there's strange fruit, there's all kinds of little things. Would I say that they're direct parallels? Maybe not all of them, but I'd say, like, maybe for me, when I was thinking about, and it's true in pretty much every religion, that religion splinters that happen so that you get different denominations or different churches that are very similar but have very different ideas, and maybe those people very vehemently disagree oftentimes, and it could create conflict. I mean, you see that across the board, and it starts with, a lot of times it starts with one idea. I think about like the difference between the Roman Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church. and it's just that's the history of organized religion, you know, in our world. And so it would make sense to me that one person's crazy new idea that would not be seen well by other, you know, organizations of that church could completely change the meaning of their doctrine and could completely change their scope of how they want to impact the world around them. So a lot of, you know, a lot of the Children of Adam and other groups, sometimes they're isolationists. But this group in this book, it would not call them isolationists. They are expansionists, and they have a doctrined reason for that.
Yeah, and it's not like you created, you know, the idea of Children of Adam. Like it's been in Fallout, so it's like
Yeah.
you got to take from like information that you knew and got to help use that to further what is already established in the Fallout lore. So
Yeah, that's right. It's like I said, one big idea. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get too specific with actual real world religions, but you know, a lot of splinters have started with just like one person or one little segment of a group saying, actually, this isn't what the text means. This is what it means, and that changes everything.
I remember when I finally got a couple sidebars, and I'm sure it's in there somewhere, and all of those many pages, there is actually a Children of Adam pamphlet. We had to write some propaganda. And that was, Dawn was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I was like, cool. Let me start doing some research. So for about 2 weeks, my Google search was all about like propaganda, occults, how they like recruit and the language that they use around these things. And that's across a variety of spiritualities and religions. There actually is a bit of a template, a process, and the way that they craft the words that they use on written form to actually like convert people. And y'all, my Google was a hot mess. I'm sure the government's watching me after that because I was definitely looking up like how to write a cult pamphlet. So,
I'm sure your Facebook was recommending fun things to
it
you.
got weird for a while, but it really was. It was interesting. And honestly, you know, even if you look at some of the settlements, one of the things I wanted to do with Beckminster Abbey was show like a different concept of a similar side, right, of the same coin, which is a group that's not about expansion, that's about service. You know, that's about their, you know, and so I wanted in a few of the settlements to hint at the flavor of what it means to kind of bring a spiritual concept of gatherings of people to underneath, and in a time when the Children of Adam are kind of reigning supreme in that regard.
Yeah, and in when you are choosing to play a child of Adam, there's actually, it shows you, okay, when you get to pick your like sub origin. Is there a word for that? Like like, am I using that wrong? So when you get to choose your, I know it's like your starting equipment, but yeah, it's like your sub origin. I'm just going to call it sub origin unless somebody's going to correct me.
I think you can call it that.
Okay. So there's your origin and your sub origin. So when you're choosing your sub origin, yeah, I think there's 2 different ones that you can choose from for Child of Adam. And like you said, like it's oh no, we believe this part of it, and oh no, we believe this part of it, even though we believe the same thing, different parts of it, basically. So,
right.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I threw those together, I was thinking kind of sort of along the lines of, you know, what kind of things would a Child of Adam want to do? And you had the thing. It's kind of the idea of you have the person who's going out and ministering to people, who's proselytizing to the masses to bring them towards division and that sort of thing. And then you have the person who is there and they see division as a crusade to go out and do good works in Adam's name. So that's kind of where I was drawing from when I was putting those together.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's not necessarily like related to the religion specifically, but I just want to shout out the Children of Adam, you know, origin, because Gabe came up with an idea that's the coolest. I think it's the coolest of the origin ideas for like the special ability that you get as a player character. It actually makes you very different than most Children of Adam, in a way that, like, you know, and you can run your table however you like, but other Children of Adam might see a player character with this ability in a lot of different ways. It's very cool. I think you called it Rad Sponge or something.
Yeah, and it's that idea that like if you're playing as a Child of Adam, reasonably, like radiation is going to treat you differently. And when you're playing in these games, you in a way get to be the main character, like, or one of the main characters. And a main character is often seen differently than someone else of a similar origin. So you get to be a child of Adam, but like, well, we've seen how much they latch on to anyone of significance. So it's a very interesting possibility for a strange dynamic. Writing that was, Dot, we might be on similar lists. I'll tell you that.
I'm telling you, like, it got weird there for a minute.
Yeah.
So when are we getting our tracksuits again?
There's a lot of interesting stuff that's like, what are non-lethal doses of radiation? What are different ways to be exposed to this?
Right? Yeah.
Like, it's like 1:30 in the morning, I've got an apple, and I'm like, maybe I should stop for tonight.
Yeah.
I remember.
Are you even like working on TTRPGs if your search history isn't full of questionable things that are totally explainable if somebody read the thing you were working on?
Look, I did a whole bunch of research on fungus that grows on dead corpses and in the winter time. That was a whole other 2 weeks of weird searches in my.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I did a lot on like weather phenomenon in the extreme colds, specifically in the American Northeast, and then I also did a lot of research on hypothermia and all, because I had to write about cold exposure, and so that entire rule set was me, and then I also had to like I had to go through multiple medical journals about like how the treatment, among other things, like effects and everything. I think I spent like a good solid week just reading like probably like 30 different medical journals.
See, they're everyone here is dedicated to their craft. They're willing to research these things to get it right. I love that. Yeah, I was in that same boat when I was trying to write my first campaign, and it was like, oh, it's gonna be set in Texas, but there's not any lore really behind Texas other than one little bit that's canon anymore. So I was like, oh, if I drop a bomb of this size on this part and this part of Texas, where's the nuclear fallout going to be? Where's the dead zone's going to be? And I ran simulations, and I'm like, oh God, people are probably
really
like,
specific.
yeah,
It's very specific. It's very specific.
So that was like,
the models they have for that are amazing.
yeah, they really are. And I
But
did
amazing.
several of them over and over, and I'm like, somebody's going to be like, who is this? And what are they doing?
Also, I had to actually do research on radioactive blizzards, because that actually is a thing that the U.S. government did research at one time.
Look, I had to learn to speak Beatnik. I had to go look up vocabulary to speak Beatnik.
Yep.
It's like a whole new language, y'all.
Oh, that is so. I can't. This is just. I'm in such a happy place right now. Thank you guys so much for talking with me about this. This is so cool. Okay, are there any suggestions for incorporating the settlement from? Oh, hey, here we go. With a bang or a whimper, assuming they get the good ending into Winter of Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be really easy. I think the only thing you'd have to do that neither book does, and there's some guidance at the end of that adventure on how to kind of set up some questions to ask your players about their settlement, if they, however they might set it up. There's settlement statistics and settlement reputation rules in Winter of Adam. You would just, based on the answers that they give you at the end of the previous adventure, figure out what numbers make sense to start them at in that settlement, and then decide where you want to place it in the Commonwealth or outside the Commonwealth. But yeah, I think it would slot in really easily. You would just have to be willing to crush it during the war chapter.
Yeah.
That's all.
Let's see. Okay, so the book takes place, so this one takes place between October 2286 and February of 2287.
It's nebulous. I don't think we give the exact months.
Yeah, we
but
never.
just the winter.
Yeah,
just the
between
winter.
but
The
sometime
winter
between,
before.
The winter before.
Yeah, so sometime
Yeah.
between New Vegas and Fallout 4, so or yeah, so sometime between, right?
I think Fallout 4 starts in October. I'm pretty sure it starts in October. So yeah, but it's the winter before Fallout 4.
Oh,
I
okay,
just
nice.
kind of threw out October, January, February because that's generally about winter time. Close enough.
Yeah, because that's when the blizzards actually start kicking off. Is usually around
In
January,
Boston,
February.
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I also had to look up how blizzards patterns looked like for the last 50 years in that
cool.
area too. That was a fun research assignment.
There's a lot of information on that, I'm sure.
Oh yes, there
Farmers'
was.
almanacs and all the fun stuff. Let's see. The 4 new factions were mentioned as having that classic Fallout feel. What inspirations did the writing team use to give it that feel? Did you have any inspiration behind the new factions that you put in there? Inside or
Yeah.
outside of the game? Like maybe it came from somewhere else. Like,
Yeah. Honestly, when I started designing the settlements, the goal was to fill in blank spots. With all the hours that I've played of Fallout, I'm always like, what am I missing? What do I want more of? So because of this kind of a, atomic 50s vibe, I decided to do some research, and I started looking into, at that time, what was kind of key things that were going on in the culture. Say, what would have happened before the bomb dropped? Where do we get this atomic vibe for Fallout? Let's talk about the Nuka-Colas. Like, where's that inspiration really coming from? And there were a few things that I picked up on, right? Gambling was huge in a new way, thus one of the settlements. And kind of the vibe that went around, and really the mob mentality that went into gambling and casinos of that time. Another huge thing that was actually on the cusp of dying out was the kind of circus scene. And it had this big vibe that had moved through a few decades, and we see it kind of die away in a certain way in the 50s. And so I wanted to kind of hint at this idea of something that had been left behind and picked back up by a new group of people. Obviously, the beatnik vibe is its own special thing, and for me as an artist myself, and I've been an artist for years, it is something that was desperately missing from the Fallout world, in my opinion. Like, where are the people that want to make new stuff, not just like, drink from the same old tin can? Like, what if somebody wants to make something? Who are those people, the innovators in a new way? And so I kind of just, that's where I started, and really the inspiration for that whole Fallout feel is the fact that Fallout has all of that. It's gone deep into this period of time that got frozen in time thanks to a nuclear war. And so really diving into the history of the 50s helped me figure out where the blank spots were and add to the things that I really wanted to bring to it. And I think that is what gives it that feel. Well, that and the cheeky humor. Fallout has the best cheeky humor in the whole world, and I swore to myself I wanted to make it as like cheeky, kind of right on the cusp line in a lot of ways as possible. And so I've seen a few in Discord like, oh my god, I love that name. Well, of course you love that name. It's got that Fallout feel. It's cheeky, and it's very like atomic, turn 50s. So that's kind of where I started, and then it just grew in this huge way from that.
I love it. That's so awesome. Yeah, I love when I saw that part in there and that, I was like, because I love like circus and that.
Yeah, there's also, there's just anytime you write, I'm sure anybody sitting on the screen right now would say the same thing. You put a piece of yourself into a lot of stuff, little things that not only do you love about the IP itself, but bits about you, right? Like I tell people all the time, if I could go back to young Dot when I was like 21, I would have shake myself and be like, don't be an actor, go be a radio DJ. So now you know why I wanted to write the beats so bad, and why the DJ had to be in there, and why I wrote a DJ script, because I love radio as a platform, and if I could do it all over again, I just work at a radio station, baby, and be a DJ all the time. So, it's little things like that. So you also put pieces of yourself, right? My love of Hancock into it that just give it a life. And you can tell that I think each person in this team has done that piece as well. Like we all just put a piece of ourselves into it. And it gives it kind of new breath along with the IP we already love.
So I like this. I like where this is going. What parts of yourself, like what's something that you love that you were like, that's not in it, but I'm going to put that in it? That like, is there anything that stands out for any of you? And we can popcorn this, like if anybody feels like they want to speak up and speak to it, like is there something that you were like, I'm gonna put that in that because that's something I like specifically?
I think mine was related to downtime. I like downtime when it's fun in games. Downtime is side quests in a video game. And like it's harder to do that in a tabletop game in the same way unless it becomes their priority. It's hard to be like, all right, let's all do this thing and then stop this thing at the same time to go do that thing and then stop this thing at the same time to go do that thing.
Yep.
Downtime felt like the time when it's like, oh, we can all do our own thing while still playing the game. And I did that longer than I'll actively admit. But like it feels like a little session of itself.
That is something that I want to say that I enjoyed about this book is the format. There was a little guide that you put in there that it said, okay, this is the main story quests, and here's all the little side quests, and it felt very video gamey to me, and I loved that. I was like, ooh, look at all the little side quests. They don't have to do
It's
these.
like you're popping open your Pip-Boy and seeing what's
Yeah,
there to
just
do.
see it right there. Yeah.
It felt very much like that, and that really got me excited. And I hope like anybody watching that if you haven't got the book yet, like you're going to love that part.
Yeah, there's a table that we made that's just shows all the quests and the side quests like grouped together. It was a little tricky for the graphics designer to get it right because I was there for the graphics designer during the end of it, so I was like trying to get like I want this feeling of like that like it's like like you can peel off like a Pip-Boy, like you're reading off of a game menu. I was like, that's what I wanted. So we managed to get it, but it was a little tricky on some parts, but we managed to get it, and it came out great. It looked great in the end.
It really does.
Like the recommended levels and everything that you would get in a video game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that was so good. That was so good. I was really excited about that. I was like, oh, this is something that I don't usually get to see in a game where it shows you, hey, these are the main ones, and these are all
Yep.
like I love that. I was like, yes, thank you.
Just a handy tool. I can already see myself like printing it and sticking it in my GM screen. You know what I mean? Like, it's so nice.
Yeah.
There was a lot from this game that felt like it could be used in like other games. Is what really got I gotta say, Jackie, your weather stuff is horrifying, but like I would use that anywhere.
I mean, and Cobalt Press.
Great compliments into that.
Cobalt Press has a wasteland dragon. I mean,
Sure.
I was
You could just drag
actually-
it right in.
That's not funny. Don't do that. Death clouds exist. Death clouds are already here. That's messed
You
up.
know,
I mean,
do
Scorch
not need
Beast.
more.
We haven't added. I mean, we haven't touched on Scorch Beast in '76. Even with Wasteland Warfare, I don't think we've touched on because there's some parts. It's like, yes, you've been approved for Fallout 4. Yes, you've been.
Yeah.
There's some things that we can't touch on yet, and some things that aren't relevant to the timeline. But
Yeah.
But I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
Wasteland Dragon.
Good.
Yes.
I mean, I think the one I had the most fun working on, and it was a monster. I think Don might know. It's the one I actually had to go back and relive being a teenager again, and it was watching a particular programming of robots. I think Don, you remember. So I can't spoil too much because it is a part of a quest, but that design was literally me just playing homage to when I used to do like actually robotics and stuff as a teenager in high school. And so I actually got to throw in some of the names are actually homages to the franchise of this particular show, and also to like some of the memories I had. So it was just like a nice little homage. So that's like one of the most personal elements of that. And it is an enemy. It is probably my most fun one. Everyone in chat remembers. I think everyone in here. I think I mentioned it once. It's a subtle Borderlands reference just because it was a fun little tag in, and it was just like I was like I cannot do it.
I like that. Let's see. Yes.
I was gonna say I don't know that it's personal. I hope it's not personal. I hope it's not like some part of my deep psyche or anything like that. There's one of the things I love about when you talk about Fallout as a setting is when we think back on the 1940s, but especially the 50s and 60s, early 60s. It's sort of like, almost this, at least on the surface, idealized version of the American dream. And in Fallout, because of the apocalypse, that dream has been taken away. You just see its bones. and there's a portion of the adventure later on that I got to work on where it's possible for characters to see the dream that they've never seen before, uh, where their perception of reality might be challenged, and where they get to choose for themselves which reality is real. Um, I don't want to say more about it than that, but that entire section was so fun to write, and the implications for how that kind of plays into the conclusion was so fun to write. I don't think that's personal, but I felt really engaged with writing that portion of the adventure.
I've played RPGs with Dom as a player, and weird reality bending things are always a theme. So I'm just putting that out there.
And I love that there's how you how we y'all wrote in the synth, when you can play a Gen 3 synth, that there you need to choose a code word or a code phrase that can reset you. Oh, that kind of gives me that it's like, oh, reset you to what? Because then that's the whole other story that people don't know about, you don't know about. Like, what could you, like, and do you even know that you have that word? Like, there's so many possibilities for that. It gives me chills. Sorry, I got chills.
Playing as a synth, you could not pay me. That seems scary.
I agree
April,
entirely.
have you experienced anything that has made you question the nature of your reality?
Oh no.
Have you questioned your existence once today?
Once.
Yeah, what? Yeah, Tyson has done a couple of. Sorry, yeah, that's a tangent. I love science fiction, or not science fiction, but I love science talks, and yeah, about parallel universes and alternate realities, and yeah, I love that stuff.
One of the sorry.
Yeah.
One of the very enticing things about this idea that you're seeing what might have been, but informed by this dream of Americana, that let's be honest, the 50s dream that Fallout proposes was never really America. It's a dream. It's a vision of how some people wanted the world to be, or how they imagined it to be. But we all know, living in the time that we do, that it was not an inclusive dream, and it was not a prosperous dream for many people. And Fallout, sort of stares that in the face and says, here's this billboard showing the great American future or past, and it's in the middle of a post-nuclear wasteland. It was wrong. It was flawed. It was based on these false premises. And so you get into this idea of, like, you could live in this world where things seem like they're better for you, but your best friend is a Gen 3 synth, and your other buddy's a Protectron. And if you live in this other world, they don't exist. The ghoul guy that you met doesn't exist as a ghoul. Maybe doesn't exist at all anymore. And so when you're making these choices, you're revealing something about your character when you confront these. Your character has to decide, what does this say about who I am, what I value, who and what is important to me? And I think that gets back to that idea of choices and consequences, and things that have that Fallout feel of, you're looking in the face of these things that are pieces of historical Americana, and then looking at what's true and what's not true. What are illusions? What are the lies that we tell ourselves?
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, kind of a little bit off of what you said, there's something that I also was like, yes, seeing the LGBTQ representation in the book. That was amazing. Seeing Esther and Eliza, and the two children of Adam in cryopods. So I won't give all the spoilers, but it's in chat. So are there any other really instances that you can think of that there were LGBTQ representation throughout the book, or anything adjacent?
I wanted to make sure with the settlements that I was, like I said, I was filling a lot of blank spots. So I told Dawn early on I wanted to see new representation. I wanted a ghoul community. I wanted a place where ghouls felt seen and belonged. I wanted to make sure that we had a place that was femme representing, right? Or all women or women represented, and they were badasses, like super cool, right? I wanted them to be like awesome. And actually, my original idea for them came from a random dream that I had about them. I know that sounds so ridiculous. And due, to some things, they kind of got shifted and moved and changed, and then we ended up with the Sisters of the Wrench. But I wanted to make sure that we had that. And then I had from the very beginning the idea with Beatsville that really, as a beatnik and with this artist commune, and because they live in this pacifist way, there's a lot more acceptance of who people are and a safe place for people. And so when I designed a key NPC, or she became a key NPC for writing, I really wanted her to keep big secrets because of who she was. She is a muse, and she's not just a muse because she's great at what she does. She's a muse because she has something to say, but only if you listen can you hear her. Do you get that story? And so I wanted a character that had something special about her in a really special way, and that gave us a new option, in this case ASL, as a language that can be spoken in the game. And I brought that early on, and I was like, I know we need sensitivity readers, but I had this really beautiful idea that language is more than just words, right? What about binary? What about ASL? What about these kinds of things? And because the world of Fallout is so big, people or the characters that you can play have to have a vast, diverse way of communicating and representing themselves. And so it was a big and important thing, at least for me, to see kind of new spaces for certain aspects of the Fallout world to really thrive and provide some diversity in your gameplay.
I love also that we have such a diverse team working on this project. I think that's really cool, and I think it needs to happen in more projects across all TTRPGs. So I like that we've got a diverse team.
There was a quest giver that I put into one of the side quests that I wrote as well. It was non-binary. I haven't actually read that part of the PDF yet, so I don't know if that character survived to the final. Dom could probably tell us, but and that character being non-binary was important to me specifically because that didn't matter to the plot. Because people of this sort exist. They just exist in the world and they don't need a reason to exist. And I feel that that's an important part of that kind of representation, is that people live different lives in different ways and we should see them as they are. And they don't need a reason to be there. They don't have to have a story. It doesn't have to be a plot about why they are this way. They are who they are.
Yep. Honestly, when I was thinking about the idea for Big Top and the Freaks came from this idea of what if a bunch of ghouls who have no place in the world stumble upon this circus or this circus tent that has been left behind, and they find something of themselves in the representation of being freaks, the unaccepted, right? That's the whole thing about the of that time. The freak shows were about seeing something that was weird and different, and people were ostracized. But what if these ghouls actually found a piece of themselves, an identity, a reality, and they attached themselves to it? And that's really where Big Top came from. Is like these ghouls they found a home with each other and a reality and an identity that made them really feel seen without having to have, like you said, this big explanation. It just is, and they just are.
That's
the Fallout video game, you play in Fallout 4 at least, you play the Vault Dweller, but in the tabletop game, you can play all of these different origins that you could never play in the video games, which is just like it completely turns the concept of playing Fallout a little bit on its head to begin with. Yeah. And it was important, I think, and everybody did it in different ways, that, we make sure that everybody knows, like, super mutants aren't all one way, and synths aren't all one. Like, nobody is. And so we wanted to kind of build out not just diversity in terms of the kinds of characters, but of course, because Fallout is inherently diverse, but also in the ways in which they are the same and different than everyone else. And it's a big book, so there's just a lot of characters and a lot of ideas. And so, of course, it's important for, that world to look real and to be interactive in a way that people can relate to it. And that means that it has to be as diverse as our world is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
I love it, and I can't wait. Hopefully, we get to play an intelligent Deathclaw and an Assaultron, and like I want to be. So somebody was saying that they needed a pet, instead for a perk. You know how we have dog meat? We need a pet iBot. That would be a fun.
I do want to say something, because somebody asked in the chat earlier if there was any stuff that like folks wanted to put in that couldn't go in for lots of reasons. And I just want to say, because you mentioned Intelligent Deathclaw, when I was drafting up the outline for the core book, because I put that together and got to decide what went in it, when we sent a load of NPCs that we proposed to Bethesda to be like, we want to do stats for these. And unfortunately, we couldn't use a lot of the stuff from Fallout 1 and 2, partly because a lot of their stuff was kind of Fallout 4 onwards at that point. But one of the ones I really wanted and was deeply sad that were like, not right now, was the Intelligent Deathclaw. So badly. Like, I had it there in the writing proposed to go, and then we couldn't use any of that chunk of section. So just know that we were close. Maybe in the future, one day, Bethesda will be like, you know what, you can have that now.
Yeah, when they do their Vault book too, they can come to me on that because I got ideas.
I'll
They
shout
will
out the
fade and
modding
fled.
community, the TTRPG modding community, the homebrew community for Fallout's great. And I think the very first homebrew I saw appear for Fallout was an Intelligent Deathclaw origin. I think that's the first one.
Yep,
So
Yeah.
people want it.
they
People
do.
want it.
Hopefully,
do.
hopefully. Soon. Okay, so I know, Gabe, you've got to get going. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Please tell us, where we can find you and all the things and projects and whatnot. So.
You can find me at Gabe James Games on most social medias. It's going to be a busy month and a half of things coming out. So most of my NDAs are breaking, and I will finally be free of this curse.
Rock on.
Yeah. Handful of things, but this is fun, and I'm excited for people to get to enjoy more of this because we wrote some weird stuff.
We did.
Yeah.
Nice.
But enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you for having me.
Bye, Gabe. It was good to see you.
Good to see you, Gabe.
Good to see you.
You're awesome.
Awesome. Okay, so let's see. We've got. There was another one that I saw. Jesse, what was it like working on Fallout again? Did you get to apply anything to the narrative that you've always wanted to be in a Fallout game / story?
Oh, so yeah, I guess I buried the lead when I didn't introduce myself as designer on the original Fallout.
So really cool, man. We're in the midst of Fallout royalty.
Well, honestly, what was really fun for me was when Don gives me this outline and he says, okay, we want you to do this middle chunk, this war where the children of Adam are attacking some of these settlements, and here's the material that Dot has created for these settlements and the kinds of characters. So pick a couple of places that they're going to attack. The players are going to go there. And I said, well, wait. What if they could attack any of these settlements depending on what the players have telegraphed they think is important and which people they interact with the most, and sort of took it in a little more of a non-linear direction there. And so Don gave me plenty of rope to hang myself when I decided to drive in that direction. And so that was a ton of fun. But the other thing that I want to note about as a person who had worked previously on Fallout is that there was a time when I was a person who had not worked on Fallout before there was a Fallout. And then I joined that team and I did a little bit of stuff and we contributed to the body of work that is Fallout. And everyone in this room is the same as me in that way. There was a time before they worked on Fallout, and now you're all Fallout designers. You've come into this world and you've contributed to that body. So we're all Fallout designers here. And I think that was the best part for me of this project, was that sense of being part of a community of people who are deeply enthusiastic and intelligent and invested in all of the things that Fallout has to say and creating the most fun experience that we could deliver to all of you who are watching this.
So we know who Dot's favorite character is. Who's everyone? Okay, so out of any of the Fallout games, I mean, including maybe in the book, who's everyone's favorite character?
Oh, I have to think on that for a second. I have
I
a
mean,
list.
A bit of
Yeah,
me
there's a
just
lot of
wants
good
to say
characters.
dog meat because
Aw.
dogs are great and
Dog
the
meat's a good
best, like,
boy.
Good boy.
anytime there's a dog in a Fallout game, it's just that is the best possible companion, obviously.
Okay, so if I couldn't choose dog meat, I love the Silver Shroud. It's
Oh, yeah.
peachy. Dawn knows
I
this.
like that.
I'm an absolute mark for the Silver
Yes.
Shroud.
That's a good one. That is
Nick
a good
Valentine.
Yeah, everybody's like, wait, you chose I get it every time. You chose Hancock over Nick Valentine. Yes, I did. He has better style. Everybody.
And Piper, like, also though, Piper, like,
Piper's
Piper's a
all
great
sass.
character,
Piper
yeah.
is,
we
but
love
you
the
know,
sass. We love.
I love it.
Weirdly, I think for me, like it's McCready, just because there's such an interesting human story behind his character as to how he's ended up where he is.
Yeah.
That and really hilarious thing that happened when I played Fallout 4, which is obviously NPCs are romanceable. And sometimes you'll like level up to a point where you'll get two of like their cutscenes back to back where stuff happens. So he went from talking to me about what had happened to his wife to immediately like, I think I'm in love with you. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, slow down. These are two cutscenes you don't want to have back to back. And it was just hilarious, random fluke of like how the game had played that I got them back to back. But it's probably one of the funniest moments that like mid-game has made me just stop and cry with laughter. Like
So
unintentionally funny. So
For me, it's Ian from Fallout 1, because at the time that I put him in the game, he was based on one of my best friends from that era.
Oh,
So
cool.
the actual Ian is still alive and doing well and has never shot me in the back with a submachine gun.
Oh, that's good. I thought you were about to give us a heart-wrenching story.
Far.
As far as you know.
that was my entire experience as Ian as a companion in playing the early Fallout games was just lots of rad scorpions killing me, and if it wasn't them, it was Ian with a shot.
So Tim Kaine actually copped to having some struggles with the AI in his recent YouTube videos that he's been doing about working on Fallout and other games.
So that's a fun little like extra like little tidbit. I love that.
I think I always gravitate towards villains, almost always.
Same.
There's so many great, and it's also hard for me to compare. Like, how do you compare characters from Fallout 1 to Fallout 4? That's really tricky because they're entirely different style of games in a lot of ways. But I'm a big fan of Far Harbor, the DLC in Fallout 4. If we're talking about newer Fallout, I think by far that's my favorite part of Fallout 4. So. There's a lot of, the Confessor and a lot of characters in that I just think are terrifying and very compelling and dynamic. And I'm a Valentine Piper combo kind of person, but I've not really ever heard anybody who's as passionate about Hancock as you are. And I have to play it again and revisit.
Literally, when I was writing it, I was like, "What is the funniest thing I could think of for Hancock?" And the funniest thing I could think of, it was him sitting at like a desk with his goons around, being like, "We got to make a poster." A lost poster, and I literally, when I sent the art team reference, I sent them a lost dog poster. As a reference, I was like, I want it to, but for the hat, like that, it just tickled me down to my core. That the idea of really, when you get to the fourth video game, you see Hancock in like his bored state, but we're seeing him in his depressed state right now. Like he's full on depressed Hancock. I love him so much, y'all. I just love Hancock.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say that I remember hearing like secondhand about all of the stuff with Hancock and the hat from Dot when I was like, what is Dot working on? Like what's in the works? Because obviously I'd submitted most of Diamond City by then. And Don was telling me about everything with the hat, and then I saw the draft, and I was like, "This is whatever Don told me," which was very accurate. It paled in comparison to actually reading how fantastic it was.
Dude,
So, like, if anyone in
said-
chat is wondering, is it really that funny and that incredible? You have to go and get the PDF because it really is.
it is. And honestly, I'm
wait.
pretty sure the only reason Bethesda let me write for Good Neighbor is because my pitch was, I promise I'm not going to touch or mess with anything except for Hancock's hat. Everything else stays exactly the same. And I guess they were like, okay, that's not that bad. So anyways.
That's just that's just an animation error on their end.
Oh yeah, that's fine. We do that all the time.
Writing the end of and like rewriting the end of the campaign, the portion at the end, and it was one of those nights where I was still up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, going over it, and I saved it, I closed the document, I reopened it, and I scrolled up to one particular room in the research facility you go to later on, and I just added a line about Hancock's hat being in that room, and then I added a line of dialogue for the last son of Adam at the end, and then I sent it immediately. I screenshot it and sent it to Dot, and I was like, "It's really late. Do you like this?"
Yeah, and I was like, that's perfect. Honestly, it's just one of those, like, there's so many things about Fallout that I love, which is like you stumble across tiny things, right? Like you pick up this comic book or that kind of thing, and the idea that you just stumble across his hat, and Adam's taking it. Why? Because it's funny. Because he just wants to stir up a little, mischievousness in Good Neighbor, to get himself in the door like that. That's just so Fallout to me. That's that cheeky humor I was talking about. Like, of course Hancock would make a lost dog, like lost pet poster for his hat. Of course he would. So anyways, there you have it.
And you get
I feel like it's
legendary.
really like reminiscent of everything that this book talks about when it comes to choices and consequence and the outcomes of things, or like as it's put in the book, like the fallout of what happens is that you have so much from the range of like Hancock's hat, which is just silly and ridiculous, and like in the grand scheme of the overall plot of the story is not deciding the fate of anything, to these things that decide the fate of entire settlements and people that you've come to care about. And even like in little ways, some of the quests that I wrote for the really heart-wrenching one that appears in the Crater of Atom, like if you get so few of them have like bad endings because everything's kind of shades of gray with Fallout, apart from one or two bits here and there. But like one of them is really great, but then one of them can be like, the other two are just like, it's kind of tragic no matter what you do, but it's whether it's tragic with joyous overtones or just like how awful could this ending be if it's not the positive tragic thing. Which again, like, that has no real bearing outside of pulling on players' emotions in one way or another, which I feel like a lot of the outcomes do, because I think with Hancock's hat, there's going to be a lot of elation if that goes the right way, and very confusing and like that unsolved mystery if you don't get it. As much as there is, heartache or fear at the end of it, or feeling disappointed or guilty or triumphant if you pick these other options, depending on, how serious this is to the stakes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's done so well throughout, like, everyone has written who's touched anything to do with the quests or the outcomes, is like, it doesn't matter whether or not it's significant to that main story arc, or a side quest, or just something really funny. It all feels like it kind of matters in experiencing it.
We were talking earlier about choice and how choice is so important to this book. Like, everything is about the choices that you make. Do you choose to pick up his hat and return it? Who knows? So in settlement design, I wanted there to be opportunity for your choices to matter, right? To how the development of these settlements happens. And you could potentially meet a settlement where they could make his hat for you. Right? Like, who said, right? There's this opportunity in the way that this kind of open world has been built, specifically with these settlements, that, maybe you don't ever pick his real hat up, but there could be other opportunity, other options for that, other ways to negotiate it. And a lot of that has to do with the choices that you make along the way. And I think that's what makes it just such a compelling thing to play at the table.
And he's not here. He's not here tonight. But Chris Bissett, who wrote a lot of the main quests and the side quests and the early chapter that coincide with the settlements prior to the war. He took what Dot worked on with the settlements and then built side quests on top of that and main quests that kind of interlink between them. But the entire point of that chapter of the adventure is to make you care. I mean, it could be love, could be hate, it could be I want to take advantage of this settlement, that there's opportunity for me there. You could interact with them in any number of ways, and there's a lot of open-ended guidance towards some ideas that we think you might be most likely to try, but you can't ever predict what people are going to do at a tabletop role-playing game table.
Right.
So all there is there's just opportunities and ideas with guidance, and Chris did a great job on those quests too, building on top of the settlements and then mechanizing it so that by the time you get to the end of that chapter, with the USS Germination quest, which is wild, all of a sudden you set up all the dominoes, all the heart dominoes, and then you start knocking them over from there through the war, through the end. And there's still humor without, but yeah, just like my favorite parts of the Fallout games is when you can laugh one moment and the next moment, you're staring at this document that you're reading about Vault 95 and you're like, that is the saddest thing I have ever seen in my life. And I love that.
That really is, though, the kind of constant conflict in Fallout, right? And actually, Jesse was just talking about, right, that you see this pretty thing, this perfect billboard ad, but the reality is this kind of foil to that. And I mean, that's true. Even if you just look at the Hancock situation, like, is it funny he's lost his hat? Of course it is. But the reality is, it's put him in a depressed state.
And who's suffering because of it?
And everybody's suffering because of it. There's always this like balance that's happening, and it's just one of those beautiful things that has kind of come into the design of this book in particular, and just brings kind of that Fallout, those themes of Fallout really to the forefront in a pretty awesome way.
One of the things I love about the whole Hancock's hat saga is that in addition to the dark humor of it, it really parallels the fact that in Fallout, you're picking through this junk and this rubble of civilization in ruins, and you are finding things that were important to people in their former lives, things that mattered to someone. And you're getting sort of this incomplete record of what they were about, who they were through this. And to you, maybe it's just junk, but to someone else, it might have been the most important thing in the world, even if it was just a teddy bear. And with Hancock, what we're seeing is how in this post-nuclear wasteland, how people hang on to things and turn them into pieces of their identity because this is all you have left. This is what you've got. So this is you. Hancock's hat isn't just a hat. It's part of Hancock's identity. It's who he is. It's who he presents himself as this leader figure over this distressed community in a ruined world. And if he can't keep himself together, how can he keep a community together? So these sorts of things are like really deep and rich things for players to think about. And then on the flip side, you're like, but really, it's just a hat.
Right.
It's very much Negan and Lucille. Negan, Walking Dead, and his bats.
It's like, I think you're right. Like and there's a lot of NPCs and characters you find that attach themselves in certain ways to the past or to physical items, right? I mean, really, the entirety of Beatsville is built around that idea, that they have attached themselves to this idea of new, this Renaissance idea that we have to come out of the Dark Ages. That's really what I base them on, is this idea of like they are the forerunners of leaving the Dark Ages behind. It's time for new writing, new art, new music, not kind of this rehashing of the old ways. But there's a lot, right? Like NPCs have books. Some of them have physical items. Some of them have secrets and stories and other key things, but I love that idea of like the things that we hold on to that give us identity and meaning that may look ridiculous to everybody else.
I do have a question in chat for Matt. Oh, so Matt, what were your inspirations for the The one I cannot say. It's Magnum.
Magnanomicon.
That's the one.
So I got the assignment from Don. He's like, I'm working on the last thing, and we need a piece of endgame gear. And it's going to be a unique weapon. We have an idea. Just do what you're going to do. Go nuts. Do the thing. And so I started ruminating. It's like, okay, so I know where we're going to be. I know what this thing is probably going to be. And I believe he specifically said he wanted a gun. And it's like, okay, of course it's going to be a gun. That's cool. But that's the great thing you need it to be. So I started riffing because it's a unique weapon. Unique weapons need a. It's the name. It's all in the name. And I knew the things we were dealing with in this story. So I started riffing and I started trying to figure out names. Like the original working name, Dawn thought it was still that for the longest time, even though I had settled on Magnanomicon. We thought first it was going to be Caliber out of space. And then I had a couple other things because I was like, that's good, but I think I can go just a little, take that a little bit, further. And so I riffed on a couple other things, kind of going in that same vibe, and finally it was like, no, it's Magnanomicon. That's it. We've got there. And settling on that, it's a wonderful weapon. When you see it at the end of the game, it's going to be a real treat for the players if they can get a hold of it. So
it's a small piece of art too, but it might be my favorite piece of art in the entire book. I think it's so cool.
I love that piece of art because and the thing is, like, so when I started coming on board as like an editor, most of the art was already commissioned. So I got to see the giant mega folder of like all the individual pieces of art that was commissioned, and I was just like, I can't wait. And my first instinct was, I can't wait to see where they end up, and it was just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal.
Oh yeah, they did a good job doing justice to the gun, and I was so happy that like a lot of the main text of it is intact, and the quote that I have for it is, I don't know how I came to it, but it was just like, that's it. With every pull of the trigger, another mind is open to the incomprehensible, and then we're off to the races.
Yep. I love that so much. I remember when I first saw that. I first saw like the Bruce stat block of it, and I was just like, "This is so good."
You know, my favorite thing about video games with guns, and you see this, not just guns, but guns are a good example. Weapons, Fallout, but a lot of RPGs is like inevitably you get to the weird weapons that do things that go far beyond like how you've come to play the game, how you come to understand how you can play the game. And that's one of those kinds of items. It way at the end, but like worth getting there for it.
Yeah, like your weapon table, the variances to somewhat of what you're gonna do, and it's then fun to see this thing that just takes it and just breaks it in half.
Yeah. I remember when I asked Don, it's like I remember Don giving me like the briefest description of like for the last set of Adam, like the power armor, and I just went, I want to go ham with this. I want to make this as weird and eldritch and scary as possible. And I'm just going, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's see what happens with it.
I love the weird and cool weapons. Like one of my favorite items to use, like in the video games, is the death tambo. Like I love just killing people with a tambourine. I don't know why that gives me so much joy, but it does.
Why didn't you let me design Death Tambo?
It's my favorite. Like I playing 76 and running around with people. My brother-in-law is like, because it's just ching ching, like just making the tambourine sound.
Yeah, I love it.
The sound of tambourines is the sound of death approaching.
Yes,
it's but the sisterhood, Magminster Abbey, was kind of founded on the idea that I wanted a place where you could go to have custom things made, a space where if you had power armor, it could be fixed or resolved. That there was this like really cool group of women, and so when I came up with Sister Amos Nishin as this kind of weapons smith, I wanted that idea of like, if you can think it up, she might be able to build it, but you're gonna pay for it. and not with
Mhm.
not with caps either. You know, like what is something that could be more valuable even than caps to somebody like the sister, or you know, the Sisters of the Ridge. And so that was the idea. Is like, yeah, let's get your weird weapons. What can you think up, or what might does she have for sale? But what are you willing to pay for it? You know.
That's fun. What are some weird weapons that you all like? Like, are there any or favorite weapon of choice in either the TTRPG or one of the video games that you're just like, that's my weapon. I don't care like what the stats, like the junk jet, like or anything like that. The shish
man.
kebab.
Jet.
Love the
Man,
shish
the
kebab.
junk jet.
It's probably a jump jet.
Yeah.
Boss
Aw.
fights.
Junk jet's fun, but like it's like our basis. I prefer the Thompson.
Mhm.
Fallout 76, like, I don't use them often because they are just, like, not the weapons that you use to kill things. But they have, like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a handheld cannon. It is the most impractical thing that you could try and kill any wasteland creature with if you think about it in reality, because it must weigh a ton, and you have to lug around actual cannonballs. But it is really funny whenever you fire it, the idea that you're just, you know, with all of the laser tech and plasma tech and, you know, good stuff that's available, that you just pick the most, like, old worldy weapons. Like, they've got, like, a musket pistol as well, like the pirate pistol. That's hilarious. Because they're so realistically ineffective.
That was one of the things about Fallout
Really
4
funny.
for the first time. Like the laser musket. It's just like
Yes.
this is so ridiculous, but I love it.
You know, I have
Yeah.
a deep love of being able to shoot. What is it? The rifle that shoots the bolts. That's a lot of fun. But honestly, because you know I'm aesthetic junkie, I really love the look of being able to hold the alien blaster.
Yeah.
There's something
yeah.
about like the old school like atomic alien that just looks so good in your hands. It's just
does.
so cool. It's so cool.
In that same vein, when you do the Nuka World DLC in Fallout 4,
Yeah.
you have the thirst gun. Because I will
Yes.
forever run
Yes.
around in Fallout 76 dressed as Nuka Cola Girl.
Same.
And thirst zappers, just...
Same.
And let us not forget, guns are great, but the holy hand grenades were a riot laugh. I love the holy hand grenade joke. Because I want to think the first time you see them, they're like, there's like a box somewhere, a crate, and there's a sign that says count to 5, and they've scratched 5 out, and they put 3.
Three.
Like, that is peak Fallout humor. I love that. I
Yes.
love that so much.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Jesse? What's your favorite one?
Well, you got the squirt gun, which just for hilarity is amazing. And the alien blaster. If I'm talking about like actual techno weapons, I like the Tesla cannon.
Yeah.
Tesla
It's just-
cannon.
It feels like overkill, but it's like overkill with a tie as opposed to like the nuke launcher.
Yeah.
It's like you can just imagine a ghoul wearing a tuxedo with a Tesla cannon, and you're just like nothing out of place about this image at all. And you're
I
just like, nope.
typically wear a top hat while I'm using the Tesla cannon. It's true. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I would just love to see even more oddball weapons. And one of the neat things about the tabletop RPG is that because you don't have to actually 3D model all of this stuff, it is fertile ground for coming up with any sort of thing that you want to throw in there. If you want to have an electro laser, you can do that. If you want to have something that's like a plasma flamer, you can do that. You want your squirt gun to be filled with contact poison. Put in wind and fire wheels or your other favorite martial arts weapon. Yeah. I'd love to see a gyrojet pistol.
Ooh.
Gun that can corner.
The dream.
Do we have anything that's net based? I'd really love. I'm a sucker for nets and good use of nets in combat. So I'd like to see something with a net. That'd be cool.
Man,
There's
that's
a
grapple gun
harpoon
can't
gun,
close.
but I don't think there's like a.
Beatsville.
Hit. Okay, everybody, in your games, go to Beatsville, get them to build you a net, and then you can go to Sister Amos, and she can.
The beats would be love in that. They would.
Yeah.
'Cause it's a non-violent.
Yeah.
It's a non-violent
Yeah.
thing,
Also,
right? Yeah.
also, involves the entire commune to actually work on building a big net together. So that's like a
right,
very
you
communal
know, to
thing.
drop
So
it.
It'd be
This is real
artsy.
hip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is
Super artsy.
This is how
Mixing
design
it-
meetings
I
go.
love that.
this was actually some of our Discord calls, just like literally just
Ridiculous ideas.
Virginia, where did the big idea for Big Boomy and Little Boomy come from?
So these are the NPCs in that heart-wrenching quest in the Creator of Atom, and I have to say I can't take credit for creating the kind of bones of this, because originally I think Don, you were going to be writing a bunch of that section, and then you asked me to take over on it. So Don had already created Old Boomy and Little Boomy as these two characters, and they had kind of like a base idea of what the side quest is dividing detonation, of kind of what their story was, without too many spoilers. Old Boomy has some plans, and Little Boomy is not on board with them. And they're these two friendly robots. And Don was like, well, you know, a quest like this, or using these if you want. And I was like, I love this, because weird little fun stories where you actually get to, especially with the robots, where they have kind of become humanized, whether that was intentional or not, over this time. So I kind of wanted to play on this idea of, you know, some of these robots have been around since before the war, like Codsworth, who remember kind of what it was like, and who have kind of grown up almost in the way that like a person would grow over the years. And I thought it would be really fun if Little Boomy was the equivalent of like a bit of an angsty teenager who didn't really know much about life yet. Because there's a lot, I think, when you're younger and you don't have the world experience, that you don't learn to understand. You know, the idea of when you're a teenager, you don't really think about other people's perspectives quite as much as you do when you're an adult. You haven't learned how to deal with grief and relationships and respecting people's choices when you don't agree with them. You're an angsty teenager that hasn't had that kind of emotional development. So Little Boomy is kind of younger than Old Boomy. He's been in a stasis pod all of the time until Old Boomy comes along and lets him out. And he's just this little robot that's really struggling with his best friend wanting to make this decision that's really important to him, that Little Boomy just can't quite grapple with it, and the players kind of have to get involved, or don't. There's consequences if they just decide to be like, you know what, this isn't our thing to deal with. So really it just came from more like, what do you do when you have a kind of more parental, I guess, not quite parental, but that kind of figure, and you have these two robots that are the same model, same thing, and by all accounts should just be any other Mr. Handies, but actually they've developed these personalities and they're at different stages in their life, like it would be with a teenager and, you know, a slightly older, maybe even older teenager or adult, and how those perspectives clash, because I thought that was a really interesting story to play through. And Fallout has so many of those where you have a character doing something that at first seems absolutely wild, but when you actually uncover bits of their history and you see why that history has informed their choices, it can completely change your perspective on a character's decisions or their personality, and the choices that you make when interacting with those people, still figuring out their way around the wasteland or their place in it, can have really dire consequences. So there are some good outcomes for that, but I also I really love tugging on emotional strings. Things that my players often say to me is just like, I just want you to emotionally damage me a little bit.
Yes.
I want that option. So I was like, you know what? All of my players always ask me for this. So I guess that's my little bit of myself that I put into Fallout, like Doc was talking about earlier, is like, I want to write some stuff that's really emotional and very shades of grey. And the other side quest in Crater of Atom is the same, where the characters involved are not entirely black and white as they might seem when you first get to them, and the outcomes can be kind of heart-wrenching too, because there can be some unintended consequences that the players don't foresee. So I think, yeah, Little Boomy, Old Boomy was really kind of Don's brainchild to start with, and he just let me go a bit wild with kind of building on the couple of sentences he gave me to build on these personalities to create that interesting dynamic that I don't think we see from other characters. I didn't want to pull similar things that other folks had already written for their really cool NPCs, because I think so many of them are unique as well. So I was like, I need something that kind of works with the creative atom for all of its weirdness, and an angsty teenage robot definitely falls. An angsty teenage robot that's part of the Church of Atom is definitely.
I like this. So, Dot, I think you saw this question already, but.
Oh, the one about Neon Flats.
Yes.
So when I was building the settlements, I told you all I was looking to fill in gaps, but one of the cool things about Fallout is the community, right? That we have Fallout has such a huge following and such a passionate community and people out there making stuff. And so I knew I wanted a location, because I'm a sucker for building things, like stuff that you could like own. I wanted a location that wasn't a campsite, but something that the PCs could maybe like settle. It didn't have to be a full settlement, but something they could like have that was theirs. And so, I was kind of thinking back, and I thought, I think it's time to add a little Easter egg from the Creation Club. And Neon Flats seemed like the right option because it was tied to Good Neighbor, and because it's before the idea that maybe people come and go from it regularly. Whoever can manage to clean it out at that time and deal with the rad roaches or whatever's like squatting in there, it kind of becomes yours. And so it really was kind of a nod to the community and the things that all of you create. And so Neon Flats is just an extra space, a little extra nod inside of Good Neighbor of something that you can kind of claim and hang on to. And so yeah, I love Neon Flats, and I thought if they'll let me, I put it here. That was one of those things I was like, oh, they're gonna take this one from me, but I'm gonna write it, and I wrote it, and they didn't take it from me.
I was really excited about the idea too when you presented it, because I was like, yes, because for you to be able to access this and have that as your home base, you're going to have to make some choices that maybe propagate Good Neighbor over Diamond City or some other groups. Like this is a great example of, oh, we want this thing, but to get it, we're going to separate ourselves or maybe make ourselves enemies to these other groups, and it's going to have a snowball of consequences. And there's a lot of like little things. Yeah.
It was one of those things I was like, I don't know if they're going to let me do it. Dod's like, you know what? We're going to put it in there because we liked what it represented, the opportunities and all of that. So
they let us do almost everything.
Almost everything. They really did. Thank you, Bethesda, for even the really weird stuff. The moment I typed out flesh fruit for the first time, I was like, that's it. I'm gonna get canceled. Bethesda will never work with me again. And here we are, everybody. So I guess we made it.
Funny enough, the cannibalism didn't make me worried.
I do have a personal question. So if somebody has on their hard limits and they're playing in this cannibalism. Any suggestions how to circumvent that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking specifically for the USS Germination adventure. Without spoiling, yes.
You can tell me outside if it's going to spoil too much. Like it's fine.
No. I think you remove that element of it. But if the violence of what's happening, I think about like if you go to zombie kind of fiction.
Yeah.
Just go towards what happens when somebody's inhibitions go away entirely and just the violence comes forward.
Yeah, you can get rid of it. And also, honestly, when I originally died, we talked about that, the USS Germination, it was just a settlement. It wasn't part of this like big initial adventure. And my thought was they actually, when the USS Germination washed up in the great like winter storm that washed them into the harbor, they already had food. They had a lot of it. My original idea was that he was sitting on good, clean food and wouldn't give it to anyone. So there's also the opportunity of just kind of removing the fleshy piece altogether and just kind of making him a bit of a hoarder, right? That was the whole part. They're a farm on water. And that's an easy way, and just the level of isolation that the USS Germination saw before they washed up on shore is enough to push, you know what I mean? So But yeah, if it's there's a lot of options, and Don's is right. Like, just make it about the frenzy piece of it. But if you really want to pull it even farther back, it can just be about the USS Germination having the resource that everybody needs, and hoarding that in a certain way. That's actually why he was originally called the Dragon in my design, is because he was hoarding clean food.
Oh, you say the dragon, and I just finished watching Hannibal. The TV show. I just finished that series, and I'm like, oh, the Red Dragon or the Tooth Fairy now. Oh, it was such a good series. I freaking loved it, and I'm sad that it's over. There was only 3 seasons.
I will say as well, it's like one of those places to point out for folks watching is that like that is one of the places where those sidebars about content warnings, but not just content warnings, actually changing that content pops up, and they are all throughout the book, and not just for the big main quests either. I'm pretty sure that when everybody was writing, anyone who was writing quests, whether they were main arcs or like small side quests, we were constantly looking at them being like, is there anything in here that actually might be a bit sensitive for some folks, and how do we change it? So the heart-wrenching one at Crater of Atom is one of those small little side quests that has a little content bar that tells you there's some themes in here that some people might not be comfortable with, that are really prevalent in the Fallout universe, but that doesn't mean they have to be at your table. And like they're not, I don't know, I want to hype this up because I think it's amazing they're included. I've seen very few campaign books that put them into this extent that folks have done in here. But like, they're not just like, oh well, you can just take that out and don't worry about it. There's actually solid advice for what to do and how, and also, yeah, if you change this though, that does mean that this thing 2 chapters on might change, and here's what you change it to. So they're actually really usable as opposed to just being like, there's some stuff.
Yeah, because even when it came to the vault, right? Like, my want to write a vault is just how corrupt vaults are. Like, vaults are single-handedly one of the most corrupt places. You can yell at raiders or anything, but vaults are the worst. And I wanted to write this really kind of corrupt
pre-war humans. It's the pre-war
yeah,
humans.
right? And the fact that they live in this perfect little isolation, it makes them, like, there's some really bad stuff you have to do in a video game, like making people ride bikes for power and tricking them and gambling and watching them. And I kind of wanted to bring that vibe of this, like, corrupt vault to a place, which is how we got the Mirage. And when I that was another space, I was like, Don, I might be pushing a little bit here. And he's like, it's all right. We'll write a sidebar where there is a secondary option for that. And because it was one of the things that we actually picked up on kind of late after it was written was the idea that I wanted to do some gambling. It's a casino. And for anybody, I love to play poker, and I wanted to give an option to people to be able to play a game, but gambling is also a huge trigger for people. Or can be, and so we wanted to make an option where it was an option, but it wasn't required. And so we tried to write a lot of that kind of stuff in that gives you space to put to keep your table safe and give you what is necessary to also really enjoy the game. So
I did have one last question that I thought was pretty cool, and it's something that I've thought as well. Has Bethesda ever come back and said, hey, can you put this little bit in? Like, can you, is there ever like any like story, like, we would like for you to include this? I see what you're doing with this. We would like, have they ever done that? Or is that not a thing?
In the adventures that we've written so far, and I don't know, I can't speak towards things that haven't been released yet, but that have been released, not in the adventures themselves, but I know that the Commonwealth was something that, was available to explore right away. And so, but it wasn't more specific than that.
Yeah, they were really, like, when I tell you they were open, they were like, write settlements. I was like, cool. Is there any structure? They're have fun. I was like, oh, it's like staring at a blank page. And you're like, oh my God, I'm sweating just thinking about it. You know what I mean? But no, they were really wonderful in giving us the free reign to like bring creative ideas to the table, without giving us, too many lines we had to walk. It was really nice.
In my experience with like having worked on the other side of Fallout other than just writing, and like being somebody who's had to submit outlines and pitches to Bethesda for things like the core book and the starter set, I don't think they, at least to me, they've never come back and been like, we really want this in the book. And I don't think that's like a lack of them being interested, because I know that there's quite a lot of folks who were reviewing our material at Bethesda who were like tabletop gamers and were really like loved the idea. I think it's just more like a lack of time, because Bethesda are a big company. They're very busy producing video games and working on video games.
There's a TV show coming out.
There's a TV show
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah.
So they're very busy. They're very busy.
But we support
They
the
were
writers
always-
too, so we're
Yes.
okay. We're happy to wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were very good at like when we were sending stuff in and being like, is this the right direction, and giving us a guide of like, actually we kind of want you to steer away from that, but you could really hone in on like, we'd be totally fine with you playing with this thing over here, which is always really great when you're working with like something that's licensed and has canon, and you have to kind of respect that when they're just like, yeah, maybe not this stuff, but you could go absolutely ham over here. Like, I was so worried with, I think much like Dot, with like when you're like, oh, they just said I can do anything with the settlement.
Yeah.
I'm writing Diamond City, and I'm like, this is really well established. Like, they know what's happening here. It's a big canon location that like has a lot of canon connections to other locations and things that happen in Fallout 4. And I was like, what are they gonna do? And I'm just like, well, the Minutemen are in here, and there's a potential like ruckus between them and this, and there's a lot of themes around like the class divide in Diamond City, and I never intended it to be this big political class kind of story happening there, but that's what I ended up writing. And I was like, there's no way they're gonna let me like present the possibility that like the Minutemen might be the bad guys here, and it's really up to the players to decide who's at fault for some of the issues happening. And they did. So I think, you know, like, it's always really surprising because you'll write stuff and you'll be like, oh, they're probably going to come back and be like, can you tweak this? And then they're just like, nah, that's fine. Go for it. And you're like,
Yeah.
Sounds legit.
oh, okay. So I can play more with, right. Which is kind of more
Yeah.
useful than them just coming back with like, could you put this in? When they're just like, you can play with this bit here. Here you go. Have fun.
Yeah.
I can
Jackie
talk
put
more-
tentacles on a power
on a
armor, so
armor.
you know.
Yeah, I managed to get. I had a lot of fun with that one, but I was gonna say in more recent times, they're very clear. Like when they will be very clear. But that is usually very clear when it's like, can you? This is probably not we want to
Yep.
to explore, or something we don't want, or it's something that we want you to just change, but it's not bad. It's just we're planning something similar, or we have other ideas, and we don't want to take that be taken away from us. And it's like respectfully, like, yeah, that's fine. And they're very nice. They're absolutely very nice. And they give great suggestions too. By the way, it's not like it's just like a little red marks here and there. It's like legitimate like suggestions, like actual documents of like actual feedback. And you're like, it's really nice actually for an IP to give that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
and actually be like explaining the logic behind it too, because they'll actually explain it, and it'll be like, it's really nice. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's awesome. All right. Any
For-
closing little bits you want to say? Jesse, were you going to say
I was
something?
going to say, as perspective from the old guy, when we're working on the original Fallout, I mean, we kind of got the idea as we were closing in on ship that we made something pretty good here. Maybe we'll sell like 10,000 units or something. TV show, and, yeah, okay, it's a thing.
All the merch, all the next games, all of this, like this, yes, such a cool game. Yes, so yeah, like all of these, everybody, we love merch. Merch is great. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you everyone so much for joining us for this chat, and thank you all for joining us and talking to us, for all of our guests here tonight. So, or morning and middle of the day, time zone, timey-wimey things. I just want to say again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this with us. And my name is April Hill. I am the community manager for Modifius Entertainment. You can find me at stiletto_assassin on Instagram and TikTok, and stiletto DM on Twitter, as well as all over the Modifius socials. So if you're wanting to chat about the games, I'm the one behind the screen. Be nice to me because I will block you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I might. You never know. Very few people have had to block because they were being unruly. But let's go around and tell everybody where to find you, what you're doing, and all that fun stuff. We will start opposite. We'll go with Matt first.
good because I don't have a heck of a lot. Hi, I'm Matt, the Killer GM on Twitter. You can find me there. I write about gaming stuff, nerdery, posting some model pictures lately because I've been doing some painting and wargaming stuff. Otherwise, coming up next, we'll see. It's getting towards summer. Might find something to occupy my time. No, you never know.
You never know. Fun stuff. All right, Virginia.
Hi, I'm Virginia. You can find me on Twitter at Tabletop Board. I was a writer on this, but I worked on Fallout in the past with Modiphius when I was working there full time. But when I'm not doing cool things with cool people here, I'm usually working away, either writing or editing or doing graphic design on some RPG. You can find that all on my Twitter. And if anyone's at UK Games Expo coming up and wants to chat about cool Fallout things, come find me. Because I'll probably post where I am on Twitter, like I always do every year. But you should definitely just go and check all of these folks out because they're amazing.
All right, Jesse.
I'm at Jesse Heinig on Twitter. I have the privilege of just using my name, where I occasionally post
That's
about.
gotta be nice.
Yeah, yeah, right. It is a privilege. I mostly post about Star Trek Online, game design, and occasionally angry screeds about things that annoy me.
That's awesome. Don.
And I'm Don at Donathan Fry on Twitter. I also have the privilege of using my real name, and I run and write games. That's my job, tabletop. So, I hope everybody who's watching this, if you haven't already checked out Winter of Adam, I really believe fully with all my heart that all the work everybody here did, something really special. I think there's something there for game masters and players of all different kinds. So I encourage you to check that out, of course. But if you're interested in other stuff that I do, you can check me out on Twitter. There's links to, all of my things that you can dig as deep as I have posted online about.
Jackie.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jackie, and you can find me on the internet as Death by Mage. Let's see, I'm now currently the editor for Fallout, the tabletop game. So a lot of the future products, you'll probably see my name in the editor slot. We have a lot of fun things in store. So keep an eye out for those.
Yeah. And Dot.
Thanks for having us to come chat, everyone, and thanks for chat for hanging out. I am Dot. You can find me online where little red dots are found. Like I said, by day I work for Cobalt Press, so come check out what we're doing with the new Tales of the Valiant game. But if you want to see some more of my writing, I actually have something that's coming out. If you like the way that I do world building and kind of the edgy, creepy aspects that I put into things, I have just finished writing for a new project called the Vineyard RPG. You can go check that out. And I have a couple other things coming down the pipeline that I can't quite talk about yet, those NDAs, but more stuff is coming, so that's a great place to find me now. And who knows, maybe you'll find me back here again. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow for the next episode of Star Trek Adventures Shackleton Expanse, the actual play series that we have at 2 p.m. Central Time here on our Twitch. And then we will pick back up our Winter of Adam actual play series next week at this time slot at 8 p.m. Central on Monday. But until then, thank you all again for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you all next time. Okay, you're good.
All right, great.